This past month, I did a good bit of reading. I got sick. Might still hear it in my voice a little bit. I apologize if that sounds off. I'm going to be taking sips of water because my throat hurts a little bit. But that meant that I got to sit down and do a good bit of reading. So, what all did I get done? First up, finished up Barrier Bones of the Midnight Soil by V.E. Schwab. This is one that I didn't get to finish in August and had to finish at the start of September. Ended up being a really good read. I love pretty much everything by V.E. Schwab. She's one of my favorite authors. This really held up alongside the rest of her works in my eyes. Tells a really violent, upsetting romance story. The ending, it wasn't the ending, but there was a part in the book near the ending that did get a few tears flowing for me. It was really rough to read through in that aspect, but ultimately a really good read. If you like dark romance aspects in books, especially if you like vampires, this is going to be a good one for you. Highly recommend that one. I don't have the physical of this one. It was for the library book club that I'm in. It was My Beloved Monster by Caleb Carr. This book was about a cat that the author had named Masha, who was a Siberian forest cat that he had for 17 years. Now, if you're like me, you hear that or you read that description of the book and you know how the book's going to end. So I was just kind of prepping myself for that going in. It's about the cat that he had for 17 years. It's going to end how you think it's going to end. And yes, it hurts. It is a very difficult read. If you have lost a pet, if you have suffered any kind of significant loss in your life, this will tug at your heartstrings. I was crying the whole way through the final chapter. It was rough. I have a hard time recommending it just because it can be, kind of devastating. I think that I would recommend this book to a specific type of person. I don't think I've met that specific type of person yet, so I don't know how to describe them, but I think I know them when I see them. Not a huge fan of it personally. It was very well written. The story of Caleb Carr's life, his relationship to cats throughout his entire life, and how Masha was a huge part of his life and the way that he coped with the world in a way was very interesting, very cool. One of my biggest complaints with it is the fact that he is very wordy. It feels kind of like you were given an essay to write and you had to get a specific word count and you just throw in as many words as possible. He is not very concise. Brevity is not in his vocabulary, which is ironic because he's got a lot of words in his vocabulary. On to the other books that I picked for the TBR of this month. If you recall, I decided to go with a bit of a water theme for funsies. The first up was Remarkably Bright Creatures, a really fun mystery story that's a little frustrating in places for me because it kind of feels like it's setting up a mystery, but you realize what the actual resolution is about halfway through the book, maybe a bit earlier if you pick up on a few things. Basically, the main character is a custodian at an aquarium where there is an octopus that is living named Marcellus, who is delightful. I've heard that the audiobook is really good. The voice for the octopus is very charming and endearing. I'm not an audiobook person. If you're an audiobook person, check that out. I hear that it's very good. But a new person moves to town, and the octopus starts noticing odd behaviors of this new person and odd behaviors of our main character. And while we, the readers, have figured out what's happening because we realize what's happening alongside Marcellus the octopus, now Marcellus the octopus is trying to figure out how he and Octopus can get all the characters to realize what is happening. It's very well written. The characters are delightful and charming. They're also kind of assholes in a really fun way a lot of the times. Like they're written in such a way where it's like, man, this person's a jerk, but it's kind of fun to view. And also, it's very cozy at times. The location is just kind of small town. Everyone knows everyone. The owner of the local supermarket is just a delight. He seems like such a nice person, but he is this terrible gossip. So it's like you want to talk to him, but you also have to keep in mind that whatever you tell him, the whole town's going to know by the end of the day. It is just a really fun dynamic that gets set up with that. Next up was House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. This was the first time I've read anything by T.J. Klune, and I've been meaning to read some of his books. So this is the first one for me, and it was so nice. It was so cozy. Linus is a caseworker for the Department of Magical Youths, and he basically goes to orphanages that have magical children and make sure that they are up to code, that the children are safe, that the people around them are safe, and then he just writes it down and makes sure that everything is shipshape there. And he gets assigned to the house in the Cerulean Sea, where there are six individual children that each are anomalies of some kind, where they are very rare magical creatures, very powerful magical creatures, and he is essentially sent there to just see what's up. It's kind of like, it's not even necessarily, it doesn't feel like he's sent there as his job is supposed to be. Like he's supposed to just be a caseworker, but the department makes it feel more like he's spying on them to try to make sure that they get shut down in a way because the department is scared of the youths coming from it. But then he gets to the island and you meet all the kids and they're all just sweethearts in their own way. Uh, it's like, you get there and he's seeing, it's like, oh, we have a sprite who's incredibly young and incredibly powerful. That's scary. You get there and she's just a kid, you know? She's just a kid that likes flowers. And while all that is really fun, I love the character interactions. I think some of the conflicts that arise are a bit over and done with a bit too soon. There's a whole section of the book where the surrounding town near the island kind of starts revolting because they are scared of the kids as well. And I think that that plot line gets kind of tossed aside a little too easily for me. It is mostly a very feel good book. It's not overly dramatic, it's not overly uh, dark or anything. And the thing that kind of ended up frustrating me a little bit with it is the fact that the message of the book, I like a message where you have to sit and think on it for a bit. How characters act, their interactions, and what the story is saying to figure out what the author is trying to say. This one, you don't have to do that with this book. It is very in your face, overtly, hey, by the way, prejudice bad is the constant through line throughout this book. And like, yes, but I feel like it could have been like interwoven a bit better so it isn't just so overtly like this is what I'm trying to say, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just something that kind of impacted my personal enjoyment with the book, but that's just me. The Mountain in the Sea. I have mixed opinions on The Mountain in the Sea. It is, according to the book, on the back here, it is about a team of scientists that go to explore and study a colony, a civilization of octopuses that have arisen that are very intelligent and have started making their own language and their own culture. I think that there was like a joke made in the book whenever they saw some of the tools that the octopuses were making. It was like they're in their stone age right now, but then they saw like what they were making things with, and it was like, or should I say, their shell age, because they're making things with shells. It got a chuckle out of me at the time. That's what the book says it's about, but that's about a third of the book. That's about a third of what actually happens is the actual researching of the octopuses. And that really bummed me out because I thought that that was a really cool concept and I wanted more of that. Uh, it ended up being more of a kind of meditation on psychology, intelligence, what it is to be human, because this is set in like a far future and there is a robot character who's fully AI. And there's questions of like, are you human? Are you a person? And it does also have a good bit to say about our current state with AI, where people, using ChatGPT to have a companion sometimes. Like every person in this world, not this world, some people in this world, but pretty much everyone in this world has an AI companion that they just talk to. It's like their person that they go to talk to whenever they have issues and need to be worked through something, which felt very eerie considering that that is how some people use ChatGPT uh, to like have something to talk to instead of an actual person, which was just like that was a whole thing on its own. Whenever I read that, I was like, that feels. I didn't see when this book was published, but depending on when this book was published, that feels borderline prophetic. Anyway, uh, so it ends up being more of a meditation on the idea of consciousness, what level of consciousness entails, like rights, humanity, anything like this. And I do find those conversations and those ideas very fascinating and interesting. I think that in a book like this, where you're talking about a civilization being formed and how do we make contact, how do we communicate with them when we don't even have the same basis of how our languages work, uh, it is an important aspect for that. However, uh, it went a bit too deep into it for something that's supposed to be a story about scientists studying octopuses. Like it went so deep into it where I couldn't help but think like I feel like I'm reading a philosophy book right now, which isn't a bad thing. I like reading philosophy books. It's just a thing I like to read. But that's not what I'm reading this for. There's also the aspect that there are two other plot lines that happen. There is one about a hacker who is hired to try to hack the system that the AI robot character is operating on. He's supposed to try to hack this character, and this hacker plot line did not do much to grip me. And then there was also a plot line of a character who was a slave on a fishing boat that was basically the fishing boat was basically an AI in and of itself, but it was being manned and maintained by slaves, um, which also brings up an interesting concept of like AI doing the work, but then humans having to do the work to maintain the AI that's doing the things that we used to do. But the plot line itself wasn't ultimately very interesting to me because I got this book to read about the octopus civilization, and it felt like that was a very small part of what it actually was. The actual climax of it left it feeling a little hollow for me because this big, huge climactic thing happens with the octopuses, and then after this big thing happens, the scientists are just like, well, that was crazy. Let's get back to work. I'm like, well, that felt anticlimactic in a way. It has its merits. I liked aspects of it, but for the most part, kind of disappointed. Currently in the middle of reading The Reef, which is just a collection of it's a historical look at the Great Barrier Reef. The first part of it just kind of goes over different expeditions that have been done throughout history. The second part of the book kind of goes over indigenous tribes and encounters with said indigenous tribes during expeditions and kind of learning about the culture there. And the third part of the book I have not gotten to yet, but I'm pretty sure that part, just based on the title of it, is going to be more about the biology, biodiversity, and some of the more like scientific aspects of it. That's the part I'm mostly looking forward to. I like marine biology stuff as like a kind of passing interest hobby. Nah. So I'm looking forward to that aspect of it. The actual history aspect of it, where it's like going over the expeditions, they have their interesting moments. I'm not a huge history buff, um, I have an issue paying attention to actual like history books. I find them ultimately to be like kind of dry sometimes, so it was kind of tough read for me. There was a lot of interesting stuff there. Not quite finished it yet. Going to get that done in October. But speaking of October, let's get to what we're reading in October. Now, first up, it's a bit of a tradition for me. I've been doing this for 8-ish years now. Every year in October, I like to read Dracula. It's a classic. Bram Stoker's Dracula. I love this book. I'm just going to give it another read this year. Again, it's just a tradition for me. Read Dracula, watch Dracula, eat pumpkin seeds. That's my October tradition. So I'm going to give that a read. I love it. I know I'm going to love it. If you haven't read Dracula, do that this month. It's a very good book. I'll cover this part to not dox myself. Halloween Party by Agatha Christie. This one is going to be the book club. So, I have not read anything by Agatha Christie before. I know from one of the people in the book club that she's very talented at writing mysteries, where supposedly it's like you have all the information and you can solve the mystery yourself before the characters get to it, if you pay attention and you put all the pieces together. I am looking forward to that experience. Mystery is not a genre I typically delve into. I don't have anything against the genre. It's just not something that pops up in my usual reading list. So I'm looking forward to that and having a really nice, well-written mystery about a Halloween party because, it's October. Speaking of October, The Devils. This was recommended to me by my brother. He said that it was a really good read and just kind of based on the little blurb I read about it because he recommends me books, but he knows I like minimal information going into them for the most part, so he didn't really tell me a lot. He just said, check this one out. It looks like it is about a priest of sorts, Brother Diaz, who is sent to reform some criminals, but each of the criminals is like, it says here, his new flock is made up of unrepentant murderers, practitioners of ghastly magic, and outright monsters. However, they also have elves lurking at the borders of their city and hunger for our flesh, while greedy princes care for nothing but their own ambitions and comfort. And the priest is essentially going to have to help fight against them, and he's got, quote unquote, devils on his side, in his flock. And so it's going to be pretty interesting, I think. And considering that, he got monsters fighting monsters, might be a pretty fun one just for Halloween in general. This tower is about to fall. And then just trying to throw in a good old nonfiction, Merlin's Tour of the Universe. It's got a fun little way to read the title. I don't know what that was. And it is basically, from what I can tell, attempting to tell the story of the cosmos and answer questions about astronomy from the perspective of a wizard. So you're going to learn about space, you're going to learn about the cosmos, but it's like a wizard is teaching it to you. That's the best I can discern from this. I read a few books by Neil deGrasse Tyson. I always find them really interesting to learn more about space and astronomy. So I am definitely looking forward to getting some more fun facts about the universe that we inhabit. But hey, that's what I've been reading and plan to be reading. What have you read recently, and what do you plan to read? Let me know. Give me recommendations. Let's talk about some books. Thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you feel so inclined, and I will catch you in the next one.